Every night, he'd bring me tea. A small gesture. A quiet ritual of love. Until one night, the chamomile tasted different. That's when I pretended to sleep and saw the true monster lurking in the shadows of my perfect life. My husband, for 12 years, Johnson Lopez had been my anchor, my confidant, the very air I breathed. Our life in Riverside, nestled amongst Chicago's most affluent suburbs, was a portrait of polished success. Our Tudor revival home, with its sprawling gardens and vintage charm, was the envy of many. Johnson, a celebrated architect whose designs graced the city's skyline, exuded an effortless charisma that had once swept me off my feet. He was handsome, ambitious, and utterly devoted, or so I believed. He had a way of looking at me, a warm, reassuring gaze that made all my insecurities melt away. His love language, as he often called it, was acts of service, fixing a leaky faucet before I even noticed, leaving my favorite coffee on the counter, and, of course, that nightly cup of chamomile. It was all so meticulously curated, a comfort blanket woven with threads of adoration. Yet, beneath this gleaming veneer, a quiet discontent had begun to fester within me. I was Wendy Lopez, once a promising investigative journalist, now mostly a freelance writer for local lifestyle magazines. My byline, once sharp and impactful, felt diluted, my ambition relegated to dusty drafts on my laptop. Johnson always assured me my work was important, but his pride in my achievements often felt patronizing. A gentle pat on the head rather than genuine recognition. He was always so busy, so successful, and I, in comparison, felt increasingly stagnant. And then there was the silence in our beautiful home, a silence only amplified by the absence of children. We had tried, for years, to no avail. A part of me, a deep, aching part, wondered if that, too, was a void Johnson secretly resented. It started subtly, a barely perceptible shift. The chamomile tea, once a comforting prelude to peaceful slumber, began to usher in an unnerving lethargy. At first I dismissed it as overwork, the lingering stress of deadlines, or perhaps just the natural slowing of metabolism as I neared my late 30s. I'd wake up feeling as though I hadn't slept at all, the morning light piercing through a fog in my brain. My energy, once boundless, dwindled to a trickle, leaving me perpetually drained. Johnson, ever the attentive husband, would stroke my hair, his brow furrowed with feigned concern. "Poor darling," he'd murmur. "You're just exhausted. Let me get you some more tea tonight. It always helps you relax." And it did, in a way. It helped me collapse into a deep, dreamless void, from which I emerged each morning feeling heavier, more disoriented, than the night before. The ritual continued, a nightly dose of what I believed was love, slowly lulling me deeper into a slumber I was beginning to suspect was far from natural. What began as a subtle dullness soon morphed into a pervasive exhaustion that consumed my waking hours. It wasn't merely tiredness. It was a profound, bone-deep weariness that settled in my joints, dulled my senses, and blurred the edges of my thoughts. My mornings were a sluggish ascent from an opaque abyss, the simple act of rising feeling like an immense physical feat. The invigorating walks I once enjoyed around our neighborhood gave way to leaden steps, and the meticulous care I used to take with my freelance articles became a struggle against a heavy eyelid and a wandering mind. Words, once my tools, now felt like strangers. I found myself canceling appointments, declining social invitations, and making excuses to Johnson for my increasingly withdrawn state. Just a phase, I'd tell myself. Too much screen time, perhaps. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Johnson, bless his attentive heart, seemed almost too concerned. Every evening, he'd return from work, his crisp suit still perfect, his smile radiating warmth, and his first order of business was almost always my tea. "You look utterly spent, my darling," he'd say, his voice laced with tender sympathy. "Let me brew you something calming. You need your rest. He'd watch me, almost insistently, as I drank every drop. There was a shift in his gaze, a glint I couldn't quite decipher. Was it worry? Or something else? It was a subtle pressure, a quiet expectation that I would consume the entire cup. Any hesitation on my part, any attempt to leave a few sips, would be met with a gentle, "Finish it, love, it'll do you good." He'd even hand it to me in bed, rather than letting me prepare it myself in the kitchen, as I sometimes preferred, ensuring I took it at the exact time he deemed fit. This hyper-attentiveness, once comforting, now pricked at the edges of my frayed nerves. The shift was so gradual, so insidious, that it was easy to dismiss. Until one Tuesday morning, I was searching for Johnson's spare car keys, which he often left on his bedside table, when my fingers brushed against something stiff and crinkly tucked beneath a stack of magazines. A pharmacy receipt. My eyes skimmed over the date. A week ago. Then the itemized list. Not just ibuprofen or allergy medication, but something that sent a jolt of ice through my veins. Ambien CR, 10 milligrams, extended release. My breath caught. Ambien? Johnson had never mentioned having trouble sleeping. In fact, he prided himself on his ability to fall asleep instantly, a gift he often joked about. And extended release. Why would he need that? It wasn't for me. I had no history of insomnia, and certainly no prescription. The receipt was crumpled, as if hastily stuffed away. A clandestine artifact in our otherwise meticulously organized life. I refolded it, my hands trembling, and placed it back exactly where I found it, pretending I hadn't seen it, but the seed of genuine fear had taken root. That same week, I began to notice other changes. Johnson, usually so open, became guarded with his phone. His once casual habit of leaving it face up on the counter vanished. Now, it was always face down, or tucked away in his pocket. He'd slip away to the study for hushed conversations, his voice lowered, almost a murmur against the closed door. When I entered the room unexpectedly, he'd flinch, quickly ending the call or snapping the screen off. "Just work, darling," he'd offer, a little too quickly, a little too smoothly. Clients can be demanding, but the late-night texts, accompanied by the faint glow of his phone beneath the covers, and the way he'd pull it close to his chest, away from my sight, contradicted his placid assurances. The warm, reassuring gaze that once anchored me now felt like a cage. And I, Wendy Lopez, was no longer just tired, but suddenly, terrifyingly, awake. The soft hum of our meticulously maintained home, once a symphony of comfort, now grated on my nerves like a discordant whisper. The unsettling awareness that had blossomed into terror after finding the Ambien receipt and witnessing Johnson's furtive phone habits began to twist into an undeniable knot of dread in my stomach. Every casual touch, every tender word from him, felt like a veiled threat, a meticulously crafted lie. My perfect life, once a vibrant tapestry, was unraveling thread by thread, revealing something sinister beneath. I watched him now, truly watched, with a clarity born of fear. His eyes, once so reassuring, seemed to hold secrets. His smile, once so genuine, now felt like a mask. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that he was hiding more than just work problems. The opportunity came one Saturday morning. Johnson had gone for his usual golf game, leaving his phone, not on his person, but charging on the kitchen counter while he grabbed his keys. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat urging me on. This was it. The moment of truth. My fingers trembled as I picked up the sleek device. A betrayal in itself, but a necessary one. I bypassed his lock screen easily, our anniversary date a cruel irony. The recent messages list loaded, and there it was, stark against the innocent backdrop. Scarlet, with a small crimson heart emoji beside her name, followed by a message from her, "Can't wait for tonight, Scarlet." The name hit me like a physical blow. Scarlet? Who was Scarlet? I didn't know anyone named Scarlet in our social circle. My breath hitched. the air suddenly thick and unyielding, the heart emoji, the suggestive wink. There was no innocent explanation. My mind reeled, trying to rationalize, to find any other meaning, but there was none. A mistress. After 12 years, Johnson had a mistress. The betrayal was a bitter taste in my mouth, acrid and suffocating. I scrolled back, quickly, silently. Their exchanges were frequent, intimate, planning clandestine meetings, laced with pet names that curdled my blood, my vision blurred with tears of hot shame and icy rage. But I swallowed them back, forcing myself to remember everything, every word, every damning detail. This wasn't just a suspicion anymore. It was a brutal, undeniable fact. A week later, the wound was still raw, festering beneath my carefully constructed facade of normalcy. I was at the annual charity gala, held at the historic Chicago Theater, an event Johnson helped organize. I spotted him across the opulent ballroom, laughing with clients, his arm casually draped around Scarlett. And then I saw the dress. My stomach lurched. It was a stunning, ruby-red silk gown, cut exquisitely, designed to turn heads. I remembered it vividly. Johnson had described it to me just a month ago, raving about its elegance, claiming he'd seen it in a magazine and it was perfect for me. He'd even hinted he might buy it for my upcoming birthday. A special surprise. But it wasn't on me. It was on Scarlett. Every fiber of my being screamed in recognition and horror. The way it hugged her curves, the way she carried herself with a confident, almost proprietorial air beside Johnson. It was a deliberate, cruel mockery. My eyes locked onto the vibrant red, a color that now symbolized not passion, but blood. This wasn't just an affair. It was an open, public humiliation. The crushing weight of betrayal descended upon me, a suffocating blanket woven from lies and deceit. My beautiful, perfect life shattered into a million irreparable pieces around me. The tears I had fought back finally spilled, silent and scalding, down my cheeks. Yet, even through the anguish, a fierce, cold determination began to ignite within me. The pain was immense, but it was quickly overshadowed by a potent cocktail of anger and a primal need for answers. This wasn't just about a broken marriage anymore. This was about the Ambien, the insistent tea, the hushed phone calls, the secret messages, and now, the public display with the woman wearing my Times dress. My husband wasn't just cheating. He was hiding something far more sinister, and I was going to uncover every last, horrifying truth. This grim resolve hardened into a terrifying, singular course of action. I had to test the tea. I had to know, without a shadow of a doubt, what he was truly putting into my nightly brew. The thought alone sent a shiver of icy dread through my core. But the alternative, living in this suffocating fog of uncertainty, or worse, succumbing to whatever sinister plan he had in store, was unbearable. I would pretend to drink it, pretend to sleep, and finally see what monstrosity unfolded in the dark. The next evening, as Johnson settled down with his book, I began my meticulous preparations. Every fiber of my being screamed in protest, but I pushed the terror down, focusing on the task at hand. I practiced my breathing, slowing it down, making it even. I rehearsed, softening my facial muscles, letting my jaw go slack, consciously relaxing every tension point in my body. I even tried lying still for extended periods, mentally mapping out how I would feign the heavy, drug-induced slumber he had become accustomed to. I removed my contact lenses earlier than usual, hoping the blurriness would add to the effect. I considered every detail, down to the slight tilt of my head, the gentle curve of my hand resting on the duvet. My heart hammered, a frantic sparrow trapped in my ribcage. But I willed it to be calm, to beat a steady rhythm of deception. He entered the bedroom at precisely 9:47 p.m., a cup of chamomile steaming gently in his hand. His smile, usually a source of comfort, now felt like a predatory baring of teeth. "Here you are, my love," he murmured, his voice as smooth as ever. "A warm cup to help you drift off after such a long day." I took the cup, my fingers brushing against his, trying to keep my hand from shaking. I raised it to my lips, allowing a small, theatrical sip. My eyes met his over the rim. He watched me, that unsettling glint in his gaze, an almost imperceptible eagerness. He turned to put the empty kettle back on the bedside table, and in that fleeting moment, I saw it. From his trouser pocket, he extracted a small, white pill bottle. With practiced ease, his back still partially turned, he uncapped it, flicked 2 small white pills into the steaming liquid, and stirred quickly with the spoon still in the cup. My blood ran cold. Asterisk 2 times pills. More than I had imagined. More than any sleep aid should require. I forced myself to swallow the gulp of air that threatened to escape. The aroma of chamomile now mingled with a faint, metallic tang. I brought the cup back to my lips, took another small sip, then another, making sure to fully empty it. Each swallow was a testament to my burgeoning courage, a silent promise to myself that I would not be defeated. I handed the empty cup back to him, my gaze unwavering. "Thank you, darling," I managed, my voice thin but steady. He smiled, a genuine relieved smile this time. A chill snaked up my spine. I settled back onto my pillow, closing my eyes slowly, breathing deeply, feigning the heavy descent into oblivion. The internal monologue was a torrent. Asterisk. Don't move. Don't twitch. Don't even blink too quickly. He's watching you. Asterisk. I could feel his presence beside the bed. A slight shift in the mattress as he moved. Every nerve ending in my body was alive, screaming, yet I forced my limbs into perfect stillness. The drug began its insidious work quickly. A wave of profound relaxation washed over me, heavy and seductive, threatening to drag me into genuine unconsciousness. I fought it, desperately, channeling every ounce of adrenaline into remaining aware. My eyelids felt impossibly heavy, my limbs like lead. I could feel the edges of my perception blurring, but the fear, raw and potent, acted as a counterweight, a tiny anchor tethering me to the present. He waited. I felt him lean closer, his breath warm on my forehead. His fingers brushed a strand of hair from my face. "Good night, my sweet Wendy," he whispered. The tenderness in his voice was a cruel mockery, twisting my stomach. I heard him move away, then the faint click of his burner phone. A hushed conversation followed, too low for me to discern words, but the cadence was unmistakable. It was Scarlet. The conversation was brief, punctuated by soft chuckles from Johnson. After he hung up, I heard him pacing softly, then stopping by the window, gazing out into the dark. I kept my eyes tightly shut, but through the tiniest crack in my lashes, I observed him. He wasn't just standing there. His hand was clenched, unclenched, then clenched again. His jaw was tight. There was a coiled tension in his shoulders, a restlessness that spoke of something dark, brewing beneath his calm facade. He walked to my side of the bed again. Slowly, deliberately, I squeezed my eyes shut, holding my breath, forcing my heart rate down. He stood there for what felt like an eternity, simply watching me. The silence was deafening, suffocating. I imagined his eyes on my face, searching for any sign of wakefulness, any flicker of defiance. It was a predator observing its prey, a chilling realization that froze the blood in my veins. He finally moved away, and I heard the soft click of the bedroom door as he exited, leaving me alone in the oppressive darkness, perfectly still, perfectly terrified, but finally, undeniably, awake to the horror of my reality. The silence that followed Johnson's exit from the bedroom felt less like oppressive darkness, and more like a canvas onto which I could finally draw my terrifying new reality. I was no longer merely suspicious. I was certain, and certainty demanded action. My mind, stripped bare of the chamomile-induced haze, was sharper than it had been in years. Though still gripped by a primal fear, I knew now that Johnson wasn't just having an affair. He was actively poisoning me. The question was why? And to what end? The answer, I was sure, lay hidden in his secret life. A life I was now determined to expose. A few days later, the opportunity presented itself. Johnson announced he had an urgent business meeting in the city that would require him to stay overnight. A potential new client? Very important, he'd said, his voice laced with his usual charming gravitas. Don't wait up for me, darling. I feigned a disappointed sigh, assuring him I understood, my internal gears already whirring. This wasn't a business trip. It was an invitation. My preparation was meticulous, fueled by a cold, desperate energy. I borrowed Rebecca's unassuming silver sedan. Our shiny black SUV would be too easily recognized. I packed a small bag with neutral clothes, a pair of dark sunglasses, and a discreet, high-quality voice recorder I'd once used for a challenging investigative piece. My old journalist's instincts, long dormant, flared to life, sharpened by the stakes. I researched the address Johnson had mentioned to his secretary, a high-end commercial building downtown. It was a flimsy cover, as I suspected. I drove to the city hours before he was due to leave, parking several blocks away from the commercial building, allowing myself time to observe. As dusk settled over the city, casting long shadows between the gleaming skyscrapers, I saw Johnson's sleek Mercedes pull up. Not at the commercial building, but a few blocks further, at an address I hadn't expected. It was an opulent residential tower, a beacon of glass and steel piercing the twilight sky, its facade reflecting the city lights like scattered diamonds. It was precisely the kind of place Johnson would choose. A monument to understated wealth. But it was definitively Times, not Times an office building. My heart thumped a frantic rhythm against my ribs, confirming my gut feeling. This was it. I watched him enter the building, a doorman in a crisp uniform bowing deferentially. I waited, the minutes stretching into an eternity of anxiety. Eventually, I saw Scarlett, looking even more striking than at the gala, step out of a waiting taxi and sweep into the same entrance. My jaw tightened. This was no casual rendezvous. This was pre-planned, deliberate, summoning every ounce of courage. I left Rebecca's car and walked towards the building, adopting the detached air of someone simply passing by. I saw a small, discreet coffee shop just across the street, offering a perfect vantage point. Ordering a latte I had no intention of drinking, I settled into a corner booth, my gaze fixed on the building's entrance. The cold dread had now morphed into a steely resolve. I would not be deterred. Hours passed. The city hummed around me, indifferent to the personal drama unfolding. Then, close to midnight, they emerged. Johnson, looking impeccably suave, and Scarlett, draped in a luxurious fur coat. They weren't holding hands, or even walking particularly close, but there was an unmistakable intimacy in their shared glances, a conspiratorial lean of their heads as they spoke. They paused briefly under the glow of a street lamp. Johnson reached into his briefcase and produced a thick, buff-colored envelope, pressing it into Scarlett's hands. It looked heavy, substantial. She clutched it, her eyes quickly scanning its contents, a small knowing smile playing on her lips. They exchanged a few quiet words. Johnson's face unreadable, Scarlett's radiating a predatory satisfaction. My recorder, hidden discreetly in my purse, was already on, though the distance made it unlikely to capture anything useful. My eyes narrowed, tracking their movements. This wasn't the impulsive, careless behavior of lovers caught in the throes of passion. This was cold, calculated. The way he handed her the envelope, the almost businesslike formality in their interaction, despite the underlying current of illicit intimacy, it sent a fresh wave of ice through my veins. This was more than an affair. It was an alliance, a scheme. The envelope, the hushed words, the clandestine meeting in a luxury apartment not their own. My husband wasn't merely cheating, he was plotting something. And Scarlett was his accomplice. The implications were chilling, far beyond the heartbreak of infidelity. My life, my very existence, felt like it was hanging by a thread. And Johnson, the man I had loved and trusted for 12 years, was holding the shears. I watched them part ways. Scarlett hailing a taxi, Johnson getting into his Mercedes, and as their vehicles disappeared into the city night, I knew, with horrifying clarity, that I had just witnessed a glimpse into a conspiracy. The conspiracy wasn't just a revelation, it was a gauntlet thrown. My heart, still thrumming with the aftershocks of fear and fury, commanded me back to the Tudor revival. Sleep was a foreign concept, a luxury I couldn't afford. I needed proof, something undeniable, something to tear down the gilded cage Johnson had built around me. My mind raced, replaying every furtive glance, every hushed phone call. The burner phone. The term clicked into place with chilling clarity. It had to exist. I returned home, parking Rebecca's car discreetly, and slipped through the front door like a ghost. Johnson was not yet back. The house, usually a haven, now felt like a death trap. I began my frantic search. I remembered his odd habit of disappearing into his study for important calls, the way he'd flinch if I approached, the sudden silence. I started there, tearing through drawers, rifling through stacks of architectural blueprints, feeling like a thief in my own home. Nothing. Next, his bedside table. I had already found the Ambien receipt there. Perhaps he'd been bolder then. Still nothing. My desperation mounted, a cold knot tightening in my stomach. Where would he hide something so incriminating, yet keep it accessible? Then it hit me. Johnson's golf bag. He had a small, zippered compartment within it where he kept extra tees, scorecards, and a small, worn leather pouch. He was meticulous about his golf game. Almost ritualistic. It was a place I would never think to look, so perfectly mundane it was genius. My trembling hands unzipped the compartment. Tucked deep within the leather pouch, beneath a handful of golf balls and a dusty glove, was a small, sleek, black phone. It was heavier than it looked, cold to the touch. My breath hitched. This was it. My fingers, slick with sweat, fumbled with the screen. There was no password. He was so confident, so arrogant, in his secrecy. The lock screen flashed to life, revealing a cascade of notifications. My gaze immediately snagged on the messages. Scarlett. Her name, once a symbol of betrayal, now pulsed with a far more terrifying meaning. I scrolled back, a sickening dread washing over me with each swipe. The casual tone of their early exchanges quickly gave way to something far more sinister. My eyes widened, scanning the words, each one a hammer blow to my heart. Asterisk asterisk. Johnson? Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Did you get the updated policy docs? She's worth far more than we initially thought. Asterisk, asterisk asterisk Scarlett. Asterisk 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 2.3 meters. Our golden ticket? J? Just need to finalize the exit strategy. Asterisk, $2.3 million. My life insurance. The words blurred, then sharpened, coalescing into a horrifying tableau of betrayal and greed. My mind reeled. This wasn't just about an affair, it was about murder. My murder. I kept scrolling, deeper into the abyss of their depravity. Asterisk asterisk Johnson. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. The CR is effective. She sleeps like the dead. But too many pills could raise flags. We need something definitive. Asterisk. Asterisk asterisk Scarlett. Asterisk 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 insulin. Looks like natural causes. Untraceable in a few days. We just need to stage the overdose carefully around it. Your grieving act better be Oscar-worthy. Asterisk. Asterisk asterisk Johnson. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Don't worry about my performance. Just make sure the alibi is solid for Friday night. One final tea time ritual. Asterisk. Asterisk asterisk Scarlett. Asterisk 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 consider it done. We'll be sipping champagne on the Riviera before you know it. Our lives, Johnson. Finally, our lives. Asterisk. A guttural cry caught in my throat but I choked it back. My exit strategy. Untraceable. One final tea time ritual. Friday night. This wasn't some abstract plot. It was real, meticulously planned, and imminent. The cold, calculated motive of money, starkly laid bare, twisted my insides. Johnson's financial troubles, which he'd always dismissed as minor architectural firm fluctuations, suddenly clicked into place. He wasn't just broke. He was desperate. And he saw my life as his last, most lucrative project. My husband? The man who brought me tea every night, who whispered sweet nothings in my ear, was planning to inject me with insulin, frame it as an accidental overdose of the very sleeping pills he'd been secretly administering. All to claim $2.3 million, and start a new life with his mistress. The casual cruelty in their messages, the sickening nonchalance with which they discussed ending my existence, was beyond anything I could have ever imagined. I was not just a wife. I was an asset, a problem to be solved, a means to an end. My hands shook so violently I almost dropped the phone. The fear was a physical entity, seizing my lungs, stealing my breath. But beneath it, a cold, hard ember of resolve began to glow. They thought I was asleep, unaware, a puppet on their strings. They were wrong. Terribly, fatally wrong. The golf bag phone, still hot from the horrifying truths it had revealed, felt like a live serpent in my trembling hands. My heart was a frantic hummingbird in my chest, fear an icy tendril coiling around my throat. Yet a different, colder sensation began to spread through my veins. A primal clarity, sharpened by the imminent threat, cut through the shock. They thought I was a puppet, a somnambulant target. They were catastrophically wrong. My first instinct wasn't to scream, or cry, or even panic beyond the initial jolt. It was to document. My years as an investigative journalist, long suppressed, roared back to life with a terrifying urgency. Every word, every heinous detail on that burner phone needed to be preserved, replicated, secured. I didn't have much time. Johnson would be home soon. My fingers, still slick with sweat, navigated the phone's interface with surprising efficiency. Screenshots. Hundreds of them, of every text, every timestamp, every incriminating detail between Johnson and Scarlett. Then, I found his call logs, the duration of their hushed conversations, the frequency. I sent them all, relentlessly, to my encrypted cloud storage, then to a secure email address I rarely used, and finally, for good measure, I transferred them to a thumb drive I kept hidden in an old camera bag. My own phone became another tool, snapping pictures of the burner phone's screen, capturing the evidence from multiple angles. This wasn't just proof of an affair. It was a meticulously laid-out murder plot, and I was holding the blueprint. As I worked, another chilling thought solidified into an immediate, non-negotiable task. My life insurance. The $2.3 million my life's worth to them could not go to Johnson. Not a cent. Not after this. My sister, Rebecca. She was the only one I truly trusted. The only one who deserved it. Should the unthinkable happen, I accessed my insurance portal. My fingers flying over the keyboard. Heart pounding. Adrenaline coursing through me. The process was surprisingly quick. I changed the beneficiary from Johnson Lopez to Rebecca Martinez, confirming the update with a cold sense of triumph mixed with profound sadness. She wouldn't know why, not yet. But it was a crucial safeguard, a silent declaration of war against their avarice. It felt like I was writing my own will. Not in death, but in defiance. The evidence secured, the beneficiary changed. I stood in the silent house, the burner phone clutched in my hand, and took a shuddering breath. Now what? Living with a man who intended to murder me was no longer an option. Running wasn't enough. They would still come for the money, perhaps even for me. I needed help. Real help. Law enforcement. The thought alone was terrifying. How could I explain this? This elaborate plot from the man everyone saw as the perfect husband, the celebrated architect? Who would believe me? But I had the evidence, irrefutable, digital evidence. My mind latched onto a name. Detective Ray Clark. I remembered him from a local news story I'd covered years ago. A meticulous, no-nonsense detective who'd cracked a complex embezzlement case. He was known for his tenacity. Finding his direct line wasn't easy, but my journalistic training kicked in. I found it through an old contact at the police department. My heart hammering like a trapped bird. I stared at the number on my screen, my thumb hovering over the call button. This wasn't just reporting a story. This was staking my life, my sanity, on the belief that justice still existed. It was the hardest, most terrifying call I had ever contemplated making. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to hide. But the ember of resolve had now become a burning core. I took another deep, shaky breath, pushed the button, and held the phone to my ear, bracing myself for the terrifying alliance I was about to forge. The line rang twice, then a crisp, professional voice answered, devoid of warmth. Detective Clark. My breath hitched, a thin, reedy sound in my own ears. Detective Clark, my name is Wendy Lopez. I believe my husband is trying to murder me. The words, once so terrifying to even think, came out with a chilling clarity. There was a beat of silence, then a sigh. Mrs. Lopez, I get calls like this. Can you provide any specifics? Or is this about a domestic dispute? His voice was weary. Accustomed to exaggeration and half-truths. It was exactly what I'd expected. Specifics, detective, I affirmed, my voice gaining strength. I have screenshots of text messages detailing the plan, a burner phone, and a life insurance policy that was changed less than an hour ago. He plans to use insulin, disguised as an Ambien overdose, this Friday night. That caught his attention. He paused, then the weariness in his voice was replaced by a sharp, focused tone. Where are you, Mrs. Lopez? Are you safe? We met 2 hours later at a secure, undisclosed location. A stark, windowless room that felt more like an interrogation chamber than a sanctuary. Detective Clark was precisely as I remembered him. Sharp eyes that missed nothing. A quiet intensity. Beside him sat another officer, a younger woman with a notepad. I laid it all out. The Ambien receipt, the red dress, Johnson's furtive calls, the stakeout at the luxury apartment, and finally, the burner phone, its screen a damning tapestry of greed and malice. As he scrolled through the messages, his expression shifted from professional skepticism to grim understanding. The younger officer gasped when she read about the insulin. This island. Premeditated, Clark murmured. His gaze now fixed on me, devoid of judgment, filled only with a profound, unsettling gravity. We have enough for an arrest, Mrs. Lopez, he said, his voice low. But without him acting on the final stage of the plan, it becomes a circumstantial case. He'll claim the texts were hypothetical, a dark joke, a fantasy. He's a charismatic man. He'll spin it. We need him caught in the act. My stomach churned. What does that mean? He leaned forward, his eyes locked on mine. It means you continue to play along, you become the bait. We wire your home, we put officers inside, covertly. You let him bring you the tea, you pretend to drink it. You pretend to sleep. And we wait for him to make his move. It's the only way to ensure a conviction that sticks. The words hung in the air, heavy, suffocating. Cooperate. Become the bait. The woman who had been lulled to sleep for months, unknowingly swallowing poison, was now asked to voluntarily step into the predator's trap. Every instinct screamed for me to run, to disappear, to simply survive. But the alternative, living in perpetual fear, knowing Johnson could walk free, knowing he would come for me again, was a fate worse than death. This was my fight, my chance to reclaim my life, to make him pay for every night of stolen consciousness, every shattered dream. I'll do it, I heard myself say, the words firm, unwavering. But he can't know, he can't suspect anything. Within hours, my beautiful Tudor revival home transformed into a silent, meticulously crafted surveillance hub. Technicians moved like ghosts, installing miniature cameras in the most innocuous places, the smoke detector, a faux plant on the mantelpiece, even the small clock radio on my bedside table, microphones, barely visible, were hidden beneath lampshades and picture frames. My phone was swapped for an identical one, now equipped with a discreet wiretap. Police officers, plainclothes, set up a command center in the neighboring vacant house, monitoring every feed, every sound. My sanctuary became a prison, albeit one guarded by those who sought to protect me. I was no longer just Wendy Lopez. I was a living trap, a meticulously observed target. The wait was an agonizing, suffocating torture. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow dancing on the wall, sent jolts of fear through me. I moved through my days in a meticulously choreographed performance, playing the part of the tired, unsuspecting wife. Johnson, for his part, seemed oblivious. He continued his nightly ritual, brewing my chamomile tea, his tender smile a horrifying mask. But I could feel his gaze, dissecting my every move, watching for any deviation from my prescribed exhaustion. The fear of discovery was a constant companion, a cold whisper in my ear. One wrong step, one flicker of genuine wakefulness, and it could all be over. Then, the testing began. Subtly at first. One night, after my tea, I felt an even heavier wave of sedation, my body struggling against the profound pull towards unconsciousness. The next morning, I woke with a headache that throbbed behind my eyes, a clear indication of an increased dosage. Johnson watched me over breakfast, his eyes assessing, calculating. "Still so tired, darling?" he'd ask, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "Perhaps you need an earlier night." Another night, he observed me carefully after I'd taken the tea, leaving the room for a moment, then returning abruptly, trying to catch me out. I forced my breathing to remain even, my limbs perfectly still, my mind a battleground against the drug's insistent embrace. The game was escalating. He was pushing the boundaries, testing his poison, testing my vulnerability, honing his deadly craft. Each night, the tea tasted a little more bitter, a little more potent, a constant reminder of the death sentence I was pretending to embrace. My days became a masterclass in duality. Outwardly, I was the devoted wife, gently worn down by inexplicable fatigue, easily coaxed into an early night with Johnson's soothing chamomile. Inwardly, I was a coiled spring of hyper-awareness, every nerve ending screaming in protest, every beat of my heart a frantic countdown. The house, once my sanctuary, was now a stage, and Johnson, my would-be killer, was both my co-star and my most dangerous audience. His game grew bolder, more insidious. After I drank the tea and settled into my feigned slumber, I'd sometimes feel the deliberate brush of his hand against my cheek, lingering, checking for the subtle shifts of real sleep. One night, he accidentally dropped a heavy book beside the bed, watching intently for any flicker, any involuntary twitch of my eyelids. Another time, he whispered my name, then waited, almost holding his breath. Each test was a microaggression, a chilling reminder of his predatory nature, pushing me closer to the brink of giving myself away. The drugs, too, continued their relentless assault. The heavier doses meant fighting an even more profound gravitational pull towards genuine unconsciousness. My mind battling a fog so thick it felt like wading through treacle. My head throbbed, my limbs ached, and the constant internal vigilance left me more exhausted than any true insomnia ever could. The calendar in my mind was marked with a chilling red circle. Friday. The final tea time ritual, as Scarlett had so casually dubbed it in their texts, loomed like an execution date. Every tick of the clock was a step closer to the ultimate deception. The moment I would have to lie absolutely still, feigning death, while a man I had loved for 12 years tried to end my life. Detective Clark had assured me they would be ready, their presence unseen, unheard, a silent shadow army. "We'll be there, Mrs. Lopez," he'd promised, his voice calm, steady. Every second. You just need to hold your nerve. Holding my nerve felt like holding the ocean back with my bare hands. Maintaining the facade for Johnson was grueling, but maintaining it for the world outside our walls was another burden entirely. My conversations with Rebecca, usually a refuge of shared laughter and sisterly banter, became another high-stakes performance. I'd mask my trembling voice, fabricate excuses for my withdrawn demeanor, swallow the screams that threatened to erupt. Just tired, Beck, I'd say, forcing a lightness I didn't feel. Work's been demanding. Each lie piled onto the monumental weight pressing down on me. Yet I knew, instinctively, that revealing the truth prematurely could compromise everything. In the quiet hours, when Johnson was engrossed in his work or out on a supposed client dinner, I found myself going through a different kind of preparation. Not for death, but for the fight for life. I reviewed the screenshots of the burner phone again and again, reinforcing my resolve, reminding myself of the cold, undeniable evil I was up against. This wasn't just about survival, it was about justice. It was about reclaiming the Wendy Lopez who had ambition, integrity, and a fierce will to live. I wasn't just planning to survive Friday. I was planning to rebuild. My resolve became my shield. My unwavering determination to see Johnson and Scarlett held accountable. My personal last will and testament. I envisioned the court, Johnson's face, Scarlett's, and then, my own, strong, unbroken. That image was my anchor, the silent promise I made to myself in the terrifying countdown to doom. Friday arrived with a deceptive softness. A quiet hum that belied the thunder brewing beneath our polished surface. The tension in the air was so thick I could almost taste it, a metallic tang on my tongue, mingling with the faint scent of Johnson's aftershave. He moved through the house with an unsettling calm, his usual charming demeanor dialed up to a chilling degree. He'd kissed my forehead before leaving for work, a lingering touch that felt less like affection and more like a final assessment. Every minute of that day was an eternity, my internal clock ticking off the seconds to my supposed demise. I made sure to seem suitably drained, stumbling through mundane tasks, a ghostly shadow in my own home, acutely aware of the hidden eyes and ears around me, a silent promise of salvation. As evening descended, painting the living room in hues of twilight, Johnson returned. His smile was broader than usual, his eyes gleaming with a strange, almost manic excitement. "Long day, my love?" he purred, his voice too saccharine, too gentle. "Let me get you that special tea." My blood ran cold, but I forced a weak smile and nodded. I watched him from the periphery of my vision as he went to the kitchen, every movement deliberate, almost ritualistic. I heard the clink of porcelain, the rush of water, the faint metallic scent as he must have added the pills. When he reappeared, the ceramic mug in his hand, a plume of steam curling upwards, his sinister smile was no longer just a mask. It was his true face. He placed the tea on my bedside table, then sat on the edge of the bed, stroking my hair. "Tonight, my dearest," he whispered, his eyes fixed on mine with an unsettling intensity, "you will finally get the rest you truly deserve." I lifted the mug, my hands trembling ever so slightly, and took a theatrical sip, then another, ensuring the liquid vanished down my throat. The taste was bitter, more potent than ever, a fiery burn that promised a swift descent into artificial slumber. I handed the empty cup back to him, my gaze unwavering, a silent challenge hidden beneath my feigned weariness. He took it, his smile widening, a predator satisfied with its prey. "Good night, my sweet Wendy," he murmured, his voice a distorted echo of the comfort it once held. I closed my eyes, allowing my body to relax into the mattress, fighting the sudden, heavy wave of sedation that crashed over me. My limbs turned to lead, my eyelids weighted, but the primal fear, sharpened by the drugs, kept me anchored to consciousness. He waited. I heard him move about the room, the faint rustle of clothing, the soft click of something small and metallic. My heart hammered against my ribs, a trapped bird desperate for escape. Then, the mattress dipped beside me. I felt his breath on my face, cool and calculated. The glint of metal, barely perceptible in the dim light filtering through the window, flashed at the edge of my vision. The terrifying confirmation sent a fresh wave of adrenaline through me, momentarily sharpening my senses. He hovered over me, his shadow falling across my face. And then, his voice, a low, venomous hiss, filled the suffocating silence. "This is the only way, Wendy," he whispered, his words dripping with a chilling mix of self-pity and entitlement. "The only way for Scarlett and me to finally have the life we deserve. You never understood, did you? Never gave me what I truly needed. All those years, wasted." His fingers, cold and clinical, found the soft skin of my inner arm. "Just a small prick. You won't feel a thing, and then we'll both be free." The tiny, sharp point of the needle pricked my skin, a searing spark of pain that I could not, dared not react to, and then chaos. The bedroom door exploded inward, splintering wood flying across the room, a flash of tactical lights. A cacophony of shouts. "Police, don't move! Hands where I can see them, Johnson Lopez." Johnson, startled, froze, his body rigid above me, the syringe still poised. His eyes, wide with disbelief and terror, met mine. In that moment, the charade shattered. He saw it. The unwavering clarity in my gaze, the utter lack of drugged surrender. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Before he could react, strong hands seized him, wrenching him away from me. The syringe clattered to the floor, its deadly contents still intact. Uniformed officers swarmed the room, their movements swift and decisive, illuminating every dark corner, every hidden lie. The air, thick with dread just moments before, now vibrated with the raw energy of justice being served. I lay there, trembling, tears finally streaming down my face, but they were tears not of fear, but of an overwhelming, unimaginable relief. I was alive. The relief, sharp and potent, was quickly followed by the blur of tactical lights and the guttural commands of Detective Clark. My eyes, still wide with the echoes of terror, tracked Johnson as he was roughly pulled from the room. His shouts of, "This is a setup. She's crazy," echoing off the walls, futile against the unwavering grip of the officers. The sheer, raw chaos was a jarring contrast to the suffocating silence of moments before. But in its wake came an exhilarating lightness, a sense of having shed an impossibly heavy burden. Officers were everywhere, securing the scene, their radios crackling with urgent whispers. Detective Clark was immediately by my side, his hand a reassuring presence on my shoulder. "You did good, Mrs. Lopez, it's over." His words, simple as they were a balm to my battered soul. I could only nod, tears still flowing freely. A trembling, fragile mess of humanity, but undeniably, gloriously, free. The following days were a whirlwind of interviews, debriefings, and medical examinations. My arm, where the needle had just barely pricked, was a stark reminder of how close I had come. Johnson, defiant and furious, was charged with attempted murder, aggravated battery, and conspiracy, but the web of his deceit began to unravel with startling speed, thanks in large part to his own arrogance. Once in custody, facing the overwhelming evidence I had meticulously collected, Scarlett Vega, his glamorous accomplice, quickly folded. Her loyalty, it turned out, was as shallow as her moral compass. Faced with the prospect of a lengthy prison sentence, she accepted a plea deal, agreeing to testify against Johnson in exchange for a reduced sentence. Her confession painted an even darker picture, detailing Johnson's financial desperation, his cold calculation, and her own eager participation in the plot to stage my accidental overdose and collect the insurance money. Her pragmatic betrayal of Johnson was almost as chilling as his initial plot against me. The story, a juicy cocktail of suburban perfection, marital betrayal, and a chilling murder plot, exploded across every news outlet. Sleeping with the enemy, Chicago architect attempts to poison wife for millions. My face, once merely a byline, was plastered on screens and front pages, alongside Johnson's mugshot and Scarlett's smirking profile. Our quiet life in Riverside was ripped open for public consumption, every detail scrutinized, every private moment made public. It was overwhelming, a dizzying onslaught of invasive curiosity. But it also served a purpose. The world now knew the truth. There was no hiding, no denying. Johnson's carefully constructed image as the devoted husband and successful architect crumbled into dust under the harsh glare of the media spotlight. Through it all, my formidable lawyer, Patricia Reeves, became my anchor. She was a force of nature, with a sharp mind and an even sharper tongue. Her reputation for uncompromising advocacy well-deserved. Patricia shielded me from the worst of the media circus, advising me on every interview, every statement. She sat with me through agonizing hours, preparing me for the trial, explaining the labyrinthine legal process. "You are not a victim, Wendy," she'd remind me, her voice firm. "You are a survivor, a witness to a monstrous crime, and your testimony will be your power." Her counsel was not just legal, it was psychological, helping me take my first fragile steps towards recovery, guiding me through the emotional minefield of betrayal and public scrutiny, and slowly, painstakingly, showing me how to reclaim my voice and my life. The immediate terror had subsided, replaced by the daunting, yet exhilarating task of building a new future. The task of building a new future culminated not in quiet reflection, but in the echoing chambers of justice, a place where the truth would finally be unburied. Stepping into the hushed courtroom on the first day of the trial, I felt less like a plaintiff and more like an exhibit. The gallery was packed. A sea of faces, reporters, curious onlookers, people who had followed the sensational headlines of the architect and his betrayed wife. Every lens, every whisper, every expectant gaze seemed focused on me, the woman who had narrowly escaped death, the survivor set to face her tormentor. Johnson sat at the defense table, impeccably dressed, his posture rigid, a forced air of injured innocence on his face. Beside him, Scarlett, looking markedly less glamorous without her designer clothes, sat with her head bowed, her shoulder-length hair shielding her from the flashing cameras. Seeing them together again, not in the clandestine shadows of deceit but under the stark glare of courtroom lights, sent a cold jolt through me. They were no longer untouchable shadows, they were criminals, and I was finally ready to expose them. My time on the stand was both the most terrifying and most empowering experience of my life. Patricia Reeves, my attorney, had prepared me meticulously, yet nothing could truly brace me for the intensity of recounting every harrowing detail. My voice, usually soft, resonated with an unwavering clarity as I described the gradual onset of fatigue, the discovery of the Ambien receipt, Johnson's furtive phone calls, the red dress, the stakeout at the opulent apartment, and finally, the burner phone. I spoke of the chilling text messages, the cold arithmetic of the $2.3 million policy, and the meticulously planned exit strategy involving insulin and an accidental overdose. I recounted the night of my supposed murder, his whispered words of entitlement, the prick of the needle against my skin just before the police stormed in. I looked directly at Johnson then, my gaze burning through his carefully constructed facade. His face, once so familiar, was now a mask of pure fury, a monster exposed. The defense, predictable in their desperation, launched into a relentless assault on my credibility. Johnson's lawyer painted me as an unstable, emotionally fragile woman, driven by jealousy and a vivid imagination. They implied I fabricated the evidence, that I was seeking revenge for a perceived affair, that my ambition as a journalist had curdled into a malicious desire for notoriety. "Mrs. Lopez," Johnson's lawyer sneered during cross-examination, "isn't it true you were unhappy in your marriage? That you resented your husband's success? That you sought a dramatic narrative for your stagnant career?" Each question was a barbed hook, designed to drag me into emotional disarray, to make me appear unreliable, but Patricia's coaching echoed in my ears. Stay calm, Wendy. Stick to the facts. Your truth is unshakable. I met their venom with facts. My answers concise and steady. Each word a hammer blow against their flimsy narrative. Scarlett, in her testimony, attempted to downplay her role, portraying herself as a naive pawn, manipulated by Johnson's dark charisma. But the prosecutor tore through her excuses, using her own plea deal agreement as a weapon against her. Facing Johnson in court, day after day, was an emotional gauntlet. Each time his eyes met mine, a cascade of memories, both sweet and sickeningly false, threatened to overwhelm me. The man who sat across from me, a defendant accused of attempted murder, was the same man who had once held me close, who had brought me tea every night, who had promised me a lifetime of love. The weight of that betrayal, relived in painstaking detail, was immense. Yet, with each memory, with each attempt by his defense to gaslight the jury, my resolve hardened. This wasn't just about my pain. It was about ensuring he could never do this to anyone else. It was about justice, pure and unadulterated. After weeks of testimony, closing arguments, and agonizing deliberation, the jury returned. The courtroom fell silent, a palpable tension gripping every person present. My heart thrummed against my ribs, a prayer forming silently on my lips. The foreman stood, his voice clear and resonant as he read the verdicts. On the charge of attempted murder, we find the defendant, Johnson Lopez, guilty. A gasp rippled through the gallery. More verdicts followed, each one a nail in Johnson's coffin. When the judge delivered the sentence, his voice stern and unequivocal, Johnson's face, for the first time, crumpled. 30 years in prison for the man who had planned to end my life so callously. For Scarlett, the judge imposed a 10-year sentence, acknowledging her cooperation, but stressing the gravity of her complicity. As the gavel fell, sealing their fates, a wave of profound relief, unlike anything I had ever known, washed over me. It wasn't triumph. Not exactly. It was the quiet, sacred feeling of survival, of reclamation. The battle was won. I had stared into the face of my abuser, relived the darkest chapters of my life, and emerged, not unscathed, but whole. Justice, raw and imperfect, had been served. The path forward was still daunting, but for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I could breathe freely, knowing the shadows of betrayal could no longer touch me. My life, truly, was my own again. The echoes of the judge's verdict lingered, a quiet hum in the vast silence that followed. But that silence was not empty. It was filled with the daunting yet exhilarating prospect of rebuilding from ash. The initial surge of relief had been profound, a cleansing flood, but it quickly receded, leaving behind the jagged debris of trauma and betrayal. My freedom, hard-won and precious, was not a destination but a fragile, terrifying new beginning. The journey of healing was arduous. My sleep, once stolen by deceit, was now haunted by nightmares. The subtle scent of chamomile, once comforting, now triggered a phantom metallic tang, a memory of poison. Therapy became my lifeline, a sanctuary where I could unravel the knots of fear and rage, where I could begin to process the sickening violation of trust. I learned to distinguish between the scars that would always mark me, and the wounds that could, with time and care, finally close. Rebecca, my steadfast sister, was a pillar of strength, her quiet support a constant reminder that I was not alone. We spent hours talking, sometimes laughing, sometimes simply existing in the comforting silence of shared understanding. She never pressed for details, only offered a steady hand and an open heart. It was during these fragile months, as the court proceedings became a fading, though never forgotten, memory, that the idea for a book began to take root. My therapist encouraged it, suggesting it could be a powerful tool for processing, for reclaiming my narrative. Initially, the thought of reliving those horrors, of exposing my vulnerability to the world, was terrifying. But as I wrote, the words flowed, raw and unfiltered, transforming my pain into purpose. Each sentence was a hammer blow against Johnson's lies, each chapter a brick in the foundation of my new identity. The memoir, tentatively titled Sleeping with the Enemy, became my catharsis, my reclamation. It wasn't just my story. It was a testament to survival, a warning, and ultimately, a beacon of hope for others entangled in similar webs of deceit. The book's release was met with an astonishing response. It soared to the top of bestseller lists, igniting conversations across the country about hidden abuse, financial manipulation, and the insidious nature of betrayal in seemingly perfect lives. My face, once just a byline, then a mugshot alongside Johnson's, was now on talk shows and magazine covers. But this time, it was my voice, my truth, that resonated. I was no longer merely a survivor. I had become a beacon, an accidental advocate. The messages poured in, heartbreaking and inspiring in equal measure. Women sharing their own stories, recognizing the red flags they had once ignored, finding the courage to leave. It was a humbling, powerful experience, reminding me that my ordeal, however painful, had not been in vain. My career, once stagnant and unfulfilled, underwent its own profound metamorphosis. The freelance lifestyle magazines gave way to national publications eager for my investigative prowess. I returned to my roots as an investigative journalist, focusing on stories of domestic abuse, financial fraud within relationships, and the often overlooked psychological manipulations that precede physical violence. I collaborated with legal aid organizations, spoke at conferences, and lent my voice to legislative efforts aimed at protecting victims. Every article, every speech, was imbued with the hard-won wisdom of my own experience, a fierce dedication to ensuring that what happened to me would serve as a lesson, a shield, for others. I was building a legacy not of victimhood, but of strength and justice. The most tangible symbol of my rebirth, perhaps, was the transformation of my home. The Tudor revival, once a gilded cage, needed to be cleansed of its ghosts. I didn't just redecorate. I reimagined. Johnson's pristine study, where he had plotted my demise, was converted into a vibrant, sun-drenched writing studio. The oppressive dark wood and heavy draperies gave way to bright, airy colors, modern art, and an abundance of natural light. His possessions were purged, every trace of him systematically removed. The gardens, once his pride, became my sanctuary, filled with resilient perennials and fragrant herbs, thriving under my own care. It was no longer our home, it was my time's home, a space meticulously crafted to reflect resilience, peace, and unwavering independence. My life now, years after the verdict, is rich and full. I have found joy in small, everyday moments, the quiet satisfaction of a well-written article, the warmth of Rebecca's company, the laughter shared with new, trusted friends, new relationships. I have approached them with a cautious optimism, a newfound ability to discern sincerity from manipulation. My intuition, once dulled by complacency, now sings with a sharp, insistent clarity. I am still Wendy Lopez, but I am also someone profoundly different, stronger, wiser, infinitely more discerning. The world, I've learned, can be a beautiful, treacherous place. But armed with self-worth and an unwavering trust in my own inner voice, I am ready for whatever it may bring. My story is not just one of survival. It is a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit to reclaim its narrative, to find purpose in pain, and to build a new beginning, brick by resilient brick.